Hey guys, what is going on? Chris here with Shughead Gaming, bringing you my review for the Wizards Enhanced Edition, developed by Carbon Studio, and while this was currently available on the Oculus Rift and HTC Vive, this review will focus on the PSVR version, which releases for PSVR March 12th, 2019, for an estimated price of $25. Of course, that depends on your region. As always, this was reviewed on a PS4 Pro. Become a powerful wizard and take fate into your own hands. Immerse yourself in a beautiful fantasy world and destroy your enemies by casting spells with hand gestures. With the Mage's Tale out about a month ago on PSVR, does the Wizards have what it takes to compete, or is it just waving a limp wand? Let's find out. As always guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you would like to see more PSVR content from me, please consider subscribing, and for video updates, hit that bell icon. And remember, if you want more PSVR news and info, check Shughead Gaming out on Twitter and Facebook. As always, let's kick things off with a look at graphics. With massive set pieces and incredibly sharp visuals, the Wizards isn't messing around with its debut on the PSVR. Some cheating can be seen here and there to pull this off, such as texture detail being slightly less detailed outside of your direct-ahead focus, and similarly with textures off in the distance, but was never overly distracting, and even less of an issue in smaller play spaces. Hopefully, a future Pro patch will see this removed for the more powerful hardware, similar to what we saw in Robinson's The Journey. But regardless, the Wizards boast some of the best draw distance we have seen on the PSVR, and all while maintaining a measured amount of detail and almost no jagged edges. With both the Mage's Tale and the Wizards coming out so close together, it's hard not to draw comparisons between the two. The Mage's Tale dripped with high production values, as its richly colored and textured world literally looked like a game you might see in a traditional flat game. However, the Mage's Tale was handicapped by the PSVR hardware in its port from the Oculus, and as a result was plagued by blurred textures and jagged edges, desperately needing the incoming Pro patch to deliver on its ambitious visuals. The Wizards, however, seems to have been more of a successful port. While the Wizards doesn't quite come at you with the same ambitious and glossy visuals as the Mage's Tale did, it does, however, come off as the better looking game due to its sheer visual scope, better utilized graphical resources, and simply a better optimized port to the PSVR. Enemy animations could be a bit smoother at times, and some parts of the world feel less visually cohesive as I would have liked, but where the Mage's Tale stuck to strictly dungeon crawling, here in the Wizards, much of your time will be spent in large and often magnificent set pieces taking place across 3 vastly different environments, and all featuring some excellent verticality, making your hours spent in this world often feeling just as epic and fantastical as you would hope in a game of this nature. Lighting and particle effects are used wisely and kept to a minimum, but the Wizards uses what it has well, making magic feel impressive and fun to wield due largely in part to the visual delivery of all 6 abilities. The Wizards feels polished and is often visually incredible for a PSVR game of this scope, making this one of the most successful PC VR ports to PSVR to date. Sound is up next.
These ruins are quite famous, but astonishingly little is known about them. There is a rift in one of the remaining towers, and my favorite theory about the history of this place is that it was a wizard king's palace that was abandoned after the rift opened.
In the sound department, the Wizards fares similarly to its visuals, coming off polished and competent. Voice work outside of orcs and goblins making orc and goblin type noises is limited to Aurelius, your mentor voiced expertly by Jason Marnocha. Aurelius talks often throughout the campaign, maybe a bit too much, but is often justified as he is tasked with teaching you key gameplay techniques, giving you hints and reminders, and most importantly, serves as the primary source of the game's narrative. Thankfully, Jason Marnocha's performance is on point, and he creates a character that is warm, helpful, and rarely intrusive, and instead helps to support the whole magical vibe of the game. When looking at sound effects, the game does a nice job ticking off all the required boxes in a quality game audio design. Game worlds feel authentic and immersive due to the inclusion of some nice ambient audio effects, such as the eerie hollowness of caves or the outside levels that howl with gusts of wind while birds and distant streams can be heard all around. As I often mention, it's the small things that can mean a lot and are often missed in smaller VR games. Carbon Studios has thankfully paid attention to these things, illustrated in the sound of your footsteps not only being audible, but changing depending on what surface you're walking on, and even going as far as to give the player control over the volume level of footsteps in the audio mix. Other effects see a similar attention to detail and express a welcomed level of quality that can really be appreciated due to a solid 3D sound mix. Probably the most important sound aspect in a game about casting spells is the sound of your attacks. Thankfully, Carbon Studios delivers, making all 6 abilities sound powerful and dynamic. Harnessing a fireball in your hand, then tossing it across the game world as it flames across the sound mix is exactly what I want to hear in a game like this. This is quality stuff and very well done. Music here ranges from folk-inspired tunes when back at your house to the more epic action variety when in combat. Speaking of which, music is often restricted to just the action beats, which I loved as it let the world live in the sound mix instead of being drowned out by constant music. All in all, the Wizards delivers a top-notch sound mix that is polished and tasteful. And that brings us to gameplay. As a young wizard, you must travel through time to save the kingdom of Meloria. Story-wise, it all sounds epic, but honestly, it's often just narrative fluff to set the stage to throw some magic at orcs, goblins, and one very large dragon. Throughout the approximately 4-hour campaign, you will explore 12 levels across 3 vastly different worlds consisting of the castles of the Realm of Man, the foreboding caves of the catacombs, and the sands of the Oriental Desert. Levels are, for the most part, linear and contained in paths, so don't expect some open-world RPG, but they do open up from time to time when getting into key battles, arena-style, or puzzle segments. The game loop here is pretty straightforward as you progress throughout the main campaign. Level by level, you will push through waves of orcs and goblins using nothing but your learned magical abilities, all of which are unlocked before the end of the first world. Mixing things up is some light puzzle solving, but I stress light puzzle solving. It's well done, but it's not there very often. Exploration is at a minimum and mostly left to searching for hidden red gems that increase your spell ability. This spell ability is fundamentally upgrade points that you can use to unlock 2 additional progression levels of any given spell, with a 3rd master level being unlocked only once you have leveled that spell up twice and completed a given challenge for that spell. Other unlockables come in the form of fate cards, which are found in chests along your journey, but more on fate cards later. The campaign is segmented by a sub-boss fight which is suitably epic, with the final boss fight, a dragon, being a definite showstopper in the headset. And that's the game loop. Not the deepest game by any means. The Wizards gets by mostly on the fun of its spellcasting, in which you will go full Doctor Strange as you perform specific gestures with your move controllers to create magic attacks. Gestures are easy to learn and remember, and for the most part are easy to perform. I say for the most part because when in the heat of combat I did find myself struggling to run and dodge enemies while I attempted two-handed gestures to bring up my shield or attack back. Unfortunately, this was more the fault of my shittiness and the limitations of the move controllers than that of the game's mechanics itself. All this being said, I did improve, and as I did, it also became impossible to not feel like a total badass. Whereas the Mage's Tale had you simply grabbing a spell from an inventory wheel and throwing it, here in the Wizards, combat actually immerses you with the game world and its lore, as it has you create and unleash spells rather than just pick up and toss one like a grenade. Targeting is handled by a lock-on mechanic, and while not perfect in the heat of battle, it still works pretty well, allowing for accurate attacks even from across the map. All 6 abilities are unique in the sense that they all have strengths and weaknesses when compared across range, power, and how they react differently to enemy types, with easier to pull off gestures often being less powerful but used more frequently. Outside of the campaign, the levels can be replayed to search for red gems they may have missed the first time through. In addition, players may also choose to implement level modifiers in the form of fate cards that I previously mentioned. 2 fate cards can be played at a time from your collected deck and can make replaying levels a drastically different experience by changing up key characteristics, often resulting in a buff to either you or enemy NPCs. This same card modifying system can also be brought over to the separate Arena mode. Arena mode is where you will likely spend most of your post-campaign time as you carry over your combat skills and put them to the test in an endless horde mode across 3 large arenas unique to this Arena mode. The combat in the Wizards is based entirely around hand gestures. The use of 2 move controllers is required. Tracking was for the most part solid, but as is the case with the move controllers, there were some frustrating moments in combat when I went to cast a spell and a combination of the game and the moves just didn't like my hand position. This was, however, not the norm and was usually pretty spot on. For people who have issues with motion sickness, the Wizards offers plenty of comfort options and of course the option of teleportation for movement. As such, motion sickness should not be an issue for anyone. For those looking for a full-on VR experience, the Wizards will also make you very happy, bringing to the table full locomotion, smooth turning, and the ability to speed both of these up. In addition, the Wizards will also come 3D rudder ready, and from what I've heard, it turns the Wizards into an even better experience by completely freeing your hands up for magic attacks and putting all locomotion controls to your feet. The 3D rudder will be available this May, and for those wanting to know more about the 3D rudder, I will leave a link in the notes below. The Wizards can be played seated or standing with a moderate amount of room recommended to accommodate all the swinging of arms that will unavoidably occur. And finally, that brings us to fun factor and my final review. The Wizards is an expertly ported PC VR title that retains everything that made it great on the PC. With great visuals and audio and some genuinely fun and innovative combat, The Wizards is a VR game that needed to be a VR game. It does run out of ideas pretty early on, but it still manages to entertain throughout, due largely to its combat system and huge set pieces. I hate rating scores and instead rate games on a basis of buy, wait for sale, or burn it to the ground. This is a definite buy for me. The Wizards Enhanced Edition is polished, fun, and innovative, all things that make a great VR title. And at this price, to me, it's a no-brainer. In fact, I would say that for my personal taste, this is probably the best PSVR title yet of 2019, and my wizarding game of choice between this and the Mage's Tale. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. If you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more PSVR content from me, please consider subscribing. And for video updates, hit that bell icon. I'll catch you guys on my next video.